Wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
We all live in a yellow submarine, yellow submarine, yellow submarine.
Good morning, it's Monday, it's the start of another week on the Flying Sub, but first I want you to marvel at how clean the desktop is. I cleaned everything off a little bit this weekend, a little bit this morning to try to get to a clean slate, as it were, to start on this week's work. And you can see we're down to just a scant few pieces that need to go into the kit before it's finished, and some tiny details. I want to work some more on the chairs. I'm going to work on maybe getting these little microphones placed somewhere around the interior before we get ready to close this up. But while I have everything out and nice and clean, I wanted to talk to you a bit about color. I've come up with a color that I'm very happy with for the for the exterior of the Flying Sub. And yes, it's true, I did use, let me go get it, I did use the Krylon Max, and it's called Sun Yellow Gloss. But I did find that it was a little bit too lemony, or a little too bright yellow, and the Flying Sub needs to be more of a school bus color. It needs to be more chrome yellow than that is. So I have one more top coat of the Tamiya. This is the famous Tamiya chrome yellow. Now, I'll talk to you about a minute about this chrome yellow. You don't want to try to use this to paint something from scratch, that color. You can go broke, you can bankrupt several foreign countries if you try to paint that Tamiya yellow over anything other than another yellow. It just doesn't cover. It's a very good top coat, but it does not cover for anything. So this is a buildup of several different layers. You start with the kit plastic, then you put the auto body gray primer on it to work out any of the dents and divots, and then you put a white sandable primer on it. So you're starting with a white base, and then I found a couple coats of the Sun Yellow with a very high grit sandpaper sanding between it, like 1,000-1,500 grit sandpaper in between coats to get it nice and auto body smooth, and then one final top coat of this. And since it's very close to that yellow, you're not really asking too much of the Tamiya as far as coverage. It's tinting the yellow base, and I'll tell you, this is like, I can't remember, I think it was $4 or $5 a can. This is $3 a can. Look at the difference. Walmart, it was like maybe $3.50 a can, and it's still a ton in there. This is almost empty just from a very light spraying. So talk about your value for money. Anyway, now that I've had this drying for a couple of days, I am ready to stripe it. And I wanted to show you how the blue looks against it, and everything's nice and pretty. But this is going to go to the side and be kept away while I'm finishing this. And also this week we are going to do a stand. It's time to take a stand for the sub, or more appropriately, to make a stand for the sub. So I went to Lowe's and picked up a nice little piece of 3/8 by 6-inch craft wood, nice and thin and stable. I didn't like the look of using a plywood, so this will give me a nice finished edge. And I just drew up something that I like for the side. I'm going to do like two of those with a solid back behind it, so that I can run wiring for switches and whatnot. And I'm just going to quick cut this out on the bandsaw and make another one to match and see how they stack up. Okay, so here's the mocked up base for the Flying Sub, and I will have, the design is to have a little flat panel there running from side to side to put the switches on. But this is about the size and about the angle, so let me pop the sub on there and see how she looks. That's nice. That's about the right height. Like I said, it's got about the right splay to it. It gives me room for the switches right here. I can hide the wiring back in that corner, and I'm going to sand over these round over the edges to make it look a little more delicate, but it takes the weight the way I want it to. It's cradling the underneath the way I want it to. Yeah, okay. All you need now is to refine the angles and round over the corners and finish, do everything else with it. But I think that is very much what I had in mind. And here is the rough base. I'm letting this glue dry, and then it's going to be a lot easier, I think, once all these pieces are in place to do the final shaping, because I will have the final geometry and orientations and all that kind of stuff, and I'll be able to make it match, to grind it to fit. And then I can start working on the control panel that's going to go about there. So coming along nicely, but glue has to dry, so I have to leave it alone. Okay, trying to find a good stopping place for Monday night. What I've got is the panel in the base with the 4 switches for the 4 circuits. This will be all of the controls. This will be the floor, the reactor, and the headlights. So what I'm going to do now is take out the switches, because they're not wiring out on any of them yet, and epoxy this piece of plastic in, and I want to do that from the back, so I can go ahead and pour that in and kind of let it set up overnight, and then I'll be able to do the lugging and tugging work on it tomorrow. Well, good morning. It's Tuesday, and I'm finishing work up on the base. I'm happy with the design of it. It is appropriately wavish. I've decided on the color of it. I'm going to go with a teal blue with a black switch plate in there. Maybe do some sort of decorative design on it. Who knows? But I want to get this painted. So the first thing I need to do is start getting some coats of primer on it. And do that in the morning while it's still cool enough outside to spray. Okay, I got a coat of paint, or a coat of the teal paint on the base, and because I got impatient and wanted to see what it looked like. And that's what it looks like. And now it's going to take many more coats of sanding and repainting, because the blue is not covering very well. I think what I'm going to do is put a coat of white sandable primer over that to give the blue something to stick to, because it wasn't sticking very well to the gray primer. But I love the color combination of the, sorry, I am off of the screen. I love the color combination of the base and the sub. I really like those colors together, which is what I was shooting for. And while I was out, I picked up, I went to my favorite local hobby shop and picked up a piece of brass that I am going to put on the back of this to act as a spring to, and it's going to have a little hook on the back of it as a rear attachment to keep the sub from sliding back too far. And while I was there, I bought a couple of these cables, and what they're going to do is allow me to take all of this wiring that is inside the sub, take all of this, I'm going to cut it down and make it into a plug that goes out through one hole, that I can run a couple of these out the bottom, and I can go ahead and wire up all the switches in the base and have the other side of the plug here, including the power and all of that, and have the other side of the plug there, and that way I can just snap the plug from the base into the sub when I am done, and I won't have to, that way I can minimize the amount of time that I am working with both the sub and the base at the same time. See, here's where I'm going to have that little bit of spring and clip, something like that, to hold it in place. But yeah, I've kind of neglected the actual finishing touches on the sub, although I did paint the chairs up nicely. I am kind of neglecting that in favor of doing this bit of wiring on the base, so take that as you will. Here is the flying sub sitting perfectly on the stand that I made for it, and all I did was add that little brass piece that screws onto the back and clips onto the, or just kind of overhangs back here to keep it from sliding back. But there you go, sits on it just right. And underneath it sits on it just right. Now actually, I may want to move that forward, which means just adjusting that brass piece at the back. There we go. I had to take about an inch, I got with an inch and a half, inch and a quarter off of it, but now it's sitting perfectly. And it's sitting in here the way I want it to be sitting, so that this whole turbine is inside the arch. So now that I have got the stand way I want it, and I don't need to keep measuring against the base of the ship, I can actually start going back to doing more base of the ship. Okay, enough stalling. I need to get on with putting these wires in. I've made the hole. Yes, the hole is made. Trying to make it unobtrusive as possible, and I've got the stand in the other room with the second, maybe third coat of paint on it by now. So I'm going to wire this up so that I can get to closing up this ship today. Actually, what I want to do is I want to get it ready to close up, put a bag over all of this, flip it over, and put a couple coats of primer on it to get it up to that level before I put the two halves together. Okay, the base is really coming together now. For a while I thought I was going to paint this, but then I remembered I had some funky vinyl that I could put in that place. I very rarely get to use the funky vinyl. It's not always appropriate, but here I think it works very nicely. So now I can wire in the switches and test this baby out one last time before we get ready to close up the hull. Okay, introducing Flying Sub Stand version 1.0. All the switches are in. The felt is on. The felt is on the bottom. These are the plugs that plug into the ship. Cord running out the back. Now, if I had my druthers, I could find a wall wart with a black cord, then that would have been perfect. But as it is, that's the one thing I gotta live with. And starring the Flying Sub. And this Flying Sub is closed up for right now. Of course, it is not glued because I still have a little bit of inside work to do. But now that the stand has been ironed out, I am done stalling and I can finish putting the sub together. So it's as simple as, and I can't do it with one hand, so I'm going to have to put the camera down. It's as simple as plugging those two plugs into each other and resting the sub on the stand. So let me do that now. And here we go. The sub is on the stand. Its tail is caught in this little crook of the back of the piece of brass like I wanted. And now we can start turning switches on. First we go with the, come on, all of the consoles. Then we do floor, reactor, headlights. There you can see the lights on the back here. I can use the little hook to pull this door closed. Like I say, use the little hook to pull the door closed. Here we go. Door's closed. Turn off the overhead light. And now we can see into the top. Now the look around the roof there and down into the front windows. Yes, all of this stuff will have to be seamed up and finished and all of that, but this is probably the truest approximation of what this looks like yet. Put the top on. Let's turn off those headlights. They glare too much. That's the reactor, floor, and now all that's left are like the bunk light and the controls. Let me see, that's it. Now that the ceiling is in and the top and bottom of the sub are pushed together, I can see what's happening on the roof over top of the bunk, and I can see some yellow roof. And I need to know if I want to do anything about it. I think I'm just going to spray the inside of the top gray, and that will take care of that roof issue. I've seen other people who actually finish the top with a corrugated plastic. I don't think I'm going to go that far. But I definitely want to close up the areas that you can see. I definitely want to paint that. So that's more things you know, and I'm glad I found that out before I glued the top and bottom together. It is Thursday, and the reason you don't see sub on table is the bottom of it is outside. Yes, I've started the priming. I put a primer coat and then a coat of white sandable primer on the bottom of it, and we're going to be progressing along very well on that today. Doing a bit of customization on the chairs, putting the shoulder straps in and angling up the seat belts so that you get a little bit more oomph out of that. Since these guys are going to be right in the front window, I wanted to put a little bit of extra snazz on that. And I've got to paint the buckles yet, but and I also cheated and made them gray instead of black because I wanted them to stand out a little bit more. The chairs are black and black and black from the front. Now they've got that wonderful blue metallic on the back, but you can't really see a lot of that from the front window. And I'm thinking, even though they're both supposed to go in straight, I may want to do something that angles the chair. I guess they would be self-centering. They would correct to put themselves back in the center. So I have to think about that some more. But I'm thinking I want to add some motion by maybe having the chairs not quite be centered or not quite be facing front. But doing a little bit of extra detail work on that. I've got the microphones from Paul, and I'm debating whether or not I'm going to put those up anywhere because they're simply so small, and I'm not sure where they're going to be useful. Okay, this is just a document for my own self-protection. I've gotten this far and haven't screwed anything up tremendously, so I am being cautious and trying to document. And you can hear the lovely nature in the background. This is two light coats of white sandable primer, and then one light coat of the yellow Krylon. And I'm going to let this set up for a good 2 or 3 hours before I come back. I'm going to sand it with a very, very high grit sandpaper, and then do one more dusting coat of the yellow Krylon over it before I do the top coat of the Tamiya. But so far so good. And this is when because this yellow is a tricky thing, I need to yes, I see spots that are uneven, but I need to let it go and catch those on the next and not try to overdo it now. Ooh, look at this clean desk. And yes, you can tell, folks, I am down to the nitty and or gritty. And it's still Thursday afternoon, and I am going to decide to finish off today's work by putting the stripes on. Yes, today is the day that the sub earns its stripes. And then it could be setting up overnight, and that's a good drying spot. That's a good spot to leave it alone. Then I can, well, I'll stop talking about what I'm going to do tomorrow, but tomorrow I want to put it together and start working on the seam on the nose. There you can see the finished stand turning away and being dejected in the corner. I've got the wiring coming out the bottom that has been protected with a bit of tape. And now we're down to it. I'm just going to use some straight edge vinyl and the masks that I created for the wings to get those tips, get the blue tips on them. And here is the bottom, or sorry, the top, all masked off and ready for the blue paint. There's strip of vinyl tape, then there's yellow painter's tape, then there's wide transfer tape, everything I can think of to keep the yellow protected from the blue. So let's put on the blue. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why you mask the whole ship off. No matter how cocky you think you are or how good you are with the airbrush, you will still get overspray. And then when you try to clean off the overspray, it will make it even worse. So yeah, I didn't tape off wide enough, and I got some overspray on there, and now I have to fix it. Well, you know, that's why it's such a relaxing hobby. Okay, the bottom is completely taped off and the blue is sprayed on. And I'll let that dry for a while. And I still got some overspray. Well, I'm going to be repainting this area many times, so I'm not so concerned about that. But man, that's going to take a lot of fixing to do on that top. So then you put this aside and put another coat of blue on the top. I've removed the white transfer tape, and I'm going to leave the yellow tape on here for another hour or so before I take it off. But I think I'm going to see if I can put a coat or two of that yellow over that. I'll sand it down first and see if I can get rid of some of that tonight. And here's a happy note to end the evening, and that is the bottom of the ship with the masks taken off and the nice blue lines revealed. Yeah, nice and straight and level and square and all that good stuff. The top is detaped. Now it is the capital of overspray, though. There are some overspray bits that I need to touch up, but I think I'm going to have to decant the paint into the airbrush to do it in such small areas. I don't think I can do those with the spray cans anymore. And then hit some of these spots with that chrome yellow, I think. And then several good coats of gloss over top of it. Well, happy Friday to one and all. It is time to do the momentous thing of closing these two halves together. I have some yellow touching up to do, but I think the first thing I want to do before I touch these up and start handling them is to quickly put a coat of clear over the blue to kind of protect it, and do that to both halves before I join them forever and ever. You can see the pile of remaining parts is very small, so that reminds me I need to put the chairs in. The ladder I will not put in until even after it is done, because I can always put that through the top hole. So I'm going to put the chairs in, and I decided not to put the microphones on. They were just too small. But let me glue those chairs down, and then we'll be ready to do a final lighting check and seal this thing up. The seats are in and they're kind of angled toward each other. Like I was saying last night, I wanted to give them a little bit of character, not have them do straight forward. I just need to make sure that they are straight up because that pin is a little bit wicky. Okay, here's the patient laying on the table on its back. So you can see I tried putting some subtle streaks in there to show somewhere, just to break up the surface, to keep it looking a little bit less like a toy. And I'm really happy with it. Still some tweaking to be done, but since I'm going to be playing with this seam and I'm going to be touching these colors many times, there's no sense committing to a final yet when I know I'm going to be doing that anyway. So I'll have plenty of opportunity to tweak colors elsewhere. So let's get the top and the bottom stuck together. Won't that be fun? Okay, enough stalling. You won't believe the things I've done to put off doing this last bit of gluing. I've actually cleaned, for God's sake. So yes, I am stalling. Let me take care of this right now. I need to put some 5-minute epoxy into all of these holes and then scoosh the ship together and let that set up, and then I'm going to come back and clean and then put some more glue into the seams. So let's bite the bullet and do it. And the deed is done. I have to use all this tape because the contours of the hull seem to have been specifically, scientifically designed to resist clamping. Any clamp you put on there simply goes like that off the side. So tape it is, and tape it will be, and now the epoxy is setting. So I don't know whether it's going to be best to leave it like this or perhaps like that. Maybe like that is how I want to leave it. And we can already see the beginning of that seam here that has to be addressed and cleaned up. But sit this will and sit it shall. Well, it's been a couple 3 hours since this was taped down, so let's take the tape off and assess the damage. all of the tape is off, and we are in tremendously good shape. Not only did we not have any paint lift off with the tape, but we don't have any seeping epoxy, and we've only got a couple gaps that we need to take care of. And I was more or less expecting to take care of perimeter gaps. Getting the core glued together was the important thing. I've got a couple of bumps here, and I think that may have been from the just me handling it, not anything else too horrible. This joint right here was the one I was expecting to have to work in, and I see that if I pull up some pressure, that'll take care of some of that. So like I said, this perimeter wasn't glued, only the core was glued. So what I'm going to do is trowel in some 10X there and tape it into, pull it tight again with tape and see if I can take care of some of that, and then let that dry for a few hours before we decide how much actually needs to have the Bondo put in. Okay, the perimeter has been glued with 10X and retaped. I know that, now this is the original release of the Flying Sub, and I know that it has recently been re-released, and they say right on the front of the box that they have improved this edge. They've retooled the top and bottom of the hulls to make those edges go together a little better. They would, you know, I mean that's them striving for perfection, because I got to tell you, it went together pretty well without it. But what this is going to allow me to do is that this is going to set up for at least tonight. This is going to be the end of my work on the sub for today, and probably for this week. Although I won't resist the temptation to do some more fiddling here. But what it's going to do is this seam is going to set up, and then I am going to be able to go in and sand, just give a good sanding and clean up that edge, and then touch the paint up all the way around the edge, most importantly up under the windows, and I still need to paint the final colors on the front. So we've got plenty to do next week, but until then, that's going to do it for the Flying Sub for this week. What the heck, what's one more view inside the cabin while everything is taped up? Lovely, lovely, lovely. Now you can see that I have a spot right here that I need to touch the yellow up on, that I had taped over, and all you see is gray there, so I'm going to have to throw some yellow paint at that. And then these little seams here on both sides. Maybe that's part of the thing they improved, is this thing here and that thing there. But that's where it's going to sit for the weekend. It's going to form up all weekend, and unless I get really bored, I'm not going to touch it. And I think that's what's going to do it for this week. Got a lot of work done on the Flying Sub. I honestly don't mean to get this much work done on a kit, but you know, the days are flying by. The kits go together quickly, especially when they're halfway done. And it looks like I have another kit from the stash to pull out and work on next. I'm, always thinking of the next project. I got an excellent idea from a gentleman online to look at again, another sub. Hey, I'm in a rut. I got subs. Got subs on the mind. So I think what I'm going to do next is the old Pegasus Nautilus sub kit that I have. I do window masks for it, and I never finished putting it together, and we're kind of in the same boat with the in the same boat, literally same boat with the Flying Sub. It was half done, it was partially finished, and then I abandoned for something newer and sexier. So that is what we're going to do next. I think it's a small kit. It will fit on a shelf nicely, and it's got some different colors to it. It's not all grays and whatnot. So we'll see if I dig that out. Maybe a surprise or two, depending on what comes in the mail. So until next week, when we'll do this, we'll pick up on the sub and finish this off, and maybe start working on the other sub. It'll be a Subway. It'll be a $5 footlong. No Jared jokes here. Thank you very much. But until next week, have a good one. Be good. Be kind to each other. Have a week, and I will see you next time.